Welcome back, historians. Location of Korea. The mountainous Korean peninsula lies between China and Japan. Korea has been called a bridge between China and Japan. The Chinese and Japanese civilizations have influenced Korea in many ways. The Koreans have mixed these influences with their own traditions to create a unique culture. The first Koreans were nomads. They came from northern or central Asia. The early Koreans lived in villages with no central government. They grew rice and made tools and weapons of bronze. Later, they used iron to make these items. The early Koreans believed in shamanism. They thought that certain people called shamans could communicate with good and evil spirits. In 109 BC, the Chinese took control of the northern part of the Korean peninsula. The Koreans drove them out 300 years later. Three separate kingdoms emerged. During the Three Kingdoms period, Chinese culture spread from Goguryeo to Paekche and Silla. People started to use the Chinese writing system. They also accepted the beliefs of Buddhism and Confucianism. Each kingdom used China's government as a model. A powerful king ruled with the help of educated officials and nobles. Japanese merchants, artisans, and scholars settled in Paekche. They introduced Japanese culture there. Korean culture also blossomed. In Silla, a queen named Sondok built a stone observatory. This is a structure for viewing space. The building still stands today and is considered the oldest observatory in Asia. In the AD 500s and AD 600s, the Three Kingdoms fought wars for control of the Korean peninsula. In one battle, China helped Silla conquer Paekche and Goguryeo. Silla controlled most of the Korean peninsula. The rise of Silla brought a time of peace. Society was made up of a few nobles at the top and a large group of farmers below. The government gave land to farmers. It also built irrigation systems for rice fields. More food was produced, trade increased, and the economy grew. Silla kings also encouraged the arts, mainly the building of Buddhist temples. One temple was a 9-story wooden tower, one of the tallest structures in East Asia at the time. Another achievement by the Silla was printing Buddhist sacred writings with wooden blocks. Korean civilization. After years of conflict, the Silla kingdom collapsed. Nobles in the north fought to claim power. By AD 935, a general named Wang Kon had won. He was the first Korean ruler to unite all of Korea. He founded the Goryeo dynasty. It stayed in power for 400 years. The Goryeo rulers set up a code of laws. Like China, they based their civil service system on examinations. Buddhism continued to spread under their leadership. Korean artisans developed movable metal type. They printed one of the world's oldest books using metal type. They also perfected the art of making celadon, a fine porcelain pottery known for its green color. In AD 1231, the Mongols invaded the northern part of Korea. After 25 years of struggle, the royal family surrendered to Mongol rule. The Korean people suffered greatly under the rule of the Mongols. Thousands of Koreans were forced to build ships for Kublai Khan's attempts to invade Japan. In 1392, the Korean general Yi Song-gi founded a new dynasty. The new ruling family was known as the Yi dynasty. It lasted for over 500 years. Yi rulers set up their capital at Hanseong. This site is now Seoul, the modern capital of South Korea. One of the greatest Yi kings was Sejong. He ruled from 1394 to 1450. Sejong was interested in science and technology. He used bronze to make the first instruments that people used to measure the amount of rainfall. He was also involved in producing sundials and globes. The globes showed the position and motion of the planets. Sejong and his advisors worked to spread literacy, or the ability to read, among the Korean people. They created an alphabet called Hangul. The Chinese and Japanese alphabets use thousands of characters. Hangul uses one letter for each sound, similar to the English alphabet. Hangul is still the standard writing system in Korea today. In 1592, Japanese forces attacked Korea. With Chinese help, the Koreans were able to win the land battles. They were also successful at sea because of their new invention, the world's first iron-covered ships called turtle ships. In the early 1600s, the Koreans were attacked by a Chinese dynasty known as the Manchus. The Yi dynasty was defeated. It had to pay tribute to show that it surrendered to the Manchu rulers. Geography and settlement. Japan is an archipelago, or a chain of islands, in the Pacific Ocean near Korea. Most Japanese live on the four largest islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. The islands are actually the tops of mountains that come up from the ocean floor. Earthquakes often strike Japan because it lies above an unstable part of the Earth's crust. The Japanese turned to the sea to make a living. They also traveled by ship among the islands. The seas kept the people separated from the rest of Asia. That forced Japan to develop as an independent civilization. The first people came to Japan more than 10,000 years ago. About 300 BC, the Yayoi arrived in Japan. They brought farming with them. They made pottery and grew rice. They were also skilled metalworkers. By AD 300, each Yayoi clan was headed by a small group of warriors. It was their job to protect the people. The early Japanese developed stories to explain how life began. One myth described the sun goddess Amaterasu. During the AD 500s, a clan called the Yamato ruled most of Japan. Legend says that the Yamato chief Jimmu was descended from the sun goddess. Jimmu became the first emperor of Japan and took the title, Emperor of Heaven. Shingo, Way of the Spirits. The early Japanese believed that humans, animals, plants, rocks, and rivers all have their own spirits. This belief is called animism. When people needed help, they called on the kami, or the nature spirits. They would perform rituals at shrines to honor the kami and ask for their help. These beliefs developed into a religion called Shinto. The word Shinto means, way of the spirits. Shinto became closely linked to Japan's monarchy. The emperor's duties included taking part in Shinto rituals. These actions were intended to help protect Japan and make sure the country was successful. Shinto still affects the Japanese people. Because of it, they have a love of nature. It also has influenced their desire for simplicity, cleanliness, and good manners. Prince Shotoku. About AD 600, a Yamato prince named Shotoku ruled Japan. He wanted to give Japan a strong, well-organized government. He created a constitution, or a plan of government. The constitution made the emperor an all-powerful ruler. The Japanese were expected to obey the emperor. The constitution laid out specific rules about how people should do the duties. These were based on the writings of Confucius. Shotoku admired Chinese civilization. He wanted the Japanese to learn from it. Officials and students studied Buddhism as well as Chinese art, philosophy, and medicine. Even after Shotoku died, Japanese officials used China as a model. In AD 646, the Yamato began the Taika. Taika is a word that means great change. Under this plan, Japan was divided into provinces, or regional districts. Officials in the provinces reported to the emperor. All farmland was placed under the emperor's control. While clan leaders could still direct farmers' work, they could no longer collect taxes. Government officials took over that job. The Taika reforms created the first strong central government in Japan. The Nara period. In the early AD 700s, the Nara period began. Japanese emperors built a new capital city called Nara. Nara had broad streets, large public squares, Buddhist temples, and Shinto shrines. The families in the noble class lived in large, Chinese-style homes. During the Nara period, emperors organized government officials by level of importance, from highest to lowest. This organization is called a hierarchy. The emperor gave positions to nobles from powerful families. In return for their services, leading government officials received estates, or large farms. The emperor's control of the land gave him great power. Buddhist teachings reached Japan from Korea in the AD 500s. Buddhism became powerful. In AD 770, a Buddhist monk tried and failed to take power in Japan. As a result, the emperor decided to leave Nara for a new capital. Samurai and shoguns. In AD 794, the Japanese capital was moved from Nara to a new city called Heian-kyo. This city later became known as Kyoto. It looked a lot like important Chinese cities. During the AD 800s, Japan was ruled by a number of weak emperors. Court officials known as regents governed for them. A regent rules for an emperor who is too young or too sick to rule. As a result, Japan's emperors had little power. Emperors pursued literature or the arts instead of governing. Other nobles also grew powerful. They formed their own armies to guard their lands and enforce the law. They gave warriors called samurai land in exchange for service. Samurai wore armor and fought on horseback. They lived by a code of conduct called Bushido. This required a samurai to be loyal to his master. A loyal samurai would rather die than betray his master or be taken prisoner. Samurai were also supposed to be brave and honorable. In 1180, a civil war broke out. The emperor rewarded the winner, Minamoto Yoritomo, to keep him loyal. He named Yoritomo shogun, or commander of the military. In the late 1200s, Japan was invaded 2 times by China's Mongol emperor. During both attempts, violent storms called typhoons destroyed many ships. The Mongols who made it to shore were defeated by the Japanese. A divided Japan. A general named Ashikaga Takauji made himself the new shogun in 1333. The shoguns from the new government were weak leaders, however. As a result, Japan became divided into small territories. Powerful military lords, known as daimyo, ruled these independent lands. To guard their lands, the daimyo used armies of samurai warriors. Many samurai became vassals of a daimyo. This meant that the samurai gave an oath of loyalty to serve his daimyo in battle. In return, the daimyo gave land to his samurai. This system is known as feudalism. Fighting spread and the violence finally ended the Ashikaga shogunate in 1567. By that time, only a few powerful daimyo were left. Society under the shoguns. Under the shoguns, Japan grew richer. Still, only a few Japanese enjoyed this wealth. This group included the emperor and his family, noble families, and military leaders. Merchants and traders also benefited. Most Japanese were poor farmers. They created most of Japan's wealth. Their lives improved with a better irrigation system for crops. Artisans on the daimyo estates made armor, weapons, and tools. Merchants sold these items. Heian-kyo, now called Kyoto, became a major center of production and trade. Artisans and merchants formed guilds. These groups protected their jobs and increased profits. The Japanese traded with Korea, China, and Southeast Asia. A typical Japanese household included grandparents, parents, and children. A man had complete control over family members. Upper-class women lost many freedoms when Japan became a warrior society. Women in farming families had more say in choosing husbands. They worked long hours in the fields, however. They cooked, wove cloth, and cared for their children. In the towns, the wives of artisans and merchants helped run businesses. Some talented women became famous artists, writers, and entertainers. Religion and the arts. During the rule of shoguns, most people in Japan believed in both Shinto and Buddhism. Each religion met different needs. Shinto linked people to nature and their homeland. Buddhism offered spiritual peace. Many Japanese wrote religious poems and plays, produced paintings, and built shrines and temples. By the time Buddhism reached Japan, it had formed into many different sects, or small groups. Many followers of a sect called Zen Buddhism practiced martial arts, or sports involving combat and self-defense. Zen Buddhists also practiced meditation. During meditation, the person tried to clear the mind of all worldly thoughts and desires. Meditation was considered a way for people to relax and find inner peace. The Japanese borrowed the Chinese writing system. However, they changed it by adding symbols that stood for sounds. This made it much easier to read and write. Lady Murasaki Shikibu wrote the tale of Genji around AD 1000. Some scholars call this work the world's first novel. The Japanese also wrote plays. The oldest type of play in Japan is called no. No plays taught Buddhist ideas. Many Noh plays are still performed in Japan today. Japanese architecture and art focused on simplicity and beauty. Shinto shrines were usually simple wooden buildings with a straw roof. Buddhist temples were built in the Chinese style. They were richly decorated. They had many altars, paintings, and statues. To create beauty inside buildings, Japanese artisans made wooden statues, furniture, and household items. Early civilization. Southeast Asia lies south of China and east of India. It has long peninsulas and a large chain of islands. Mountain ranges cross the mainland. The lowlands between them have rich soil. The island soil is also fertile. Many people settled in the lowlands and on the islands because the farming was good. The area also has dangers. The islands have many active volcanoes. The lowland areas on the coast may be struck by tsunamis. A tsunami is a huge ocean wave caused by an undersea earthquake. This happened in Japan in 2011. People in the lowlands were cut off from each other by the mountains. People on the islands were separated by the sea. As a result of its geography, Southeast Asia has many ethnic groups, languages, and religions. It has always been divided into many different empires and kingdoms. Early Southeast Asians grew rice, raised cattle and pigs, and made metal goods. These people believed in animism, or the belief that living and non-living things have spirits. They practiced rituals to honor their ancestors and nature spirits. Southeast Asians also developed their own forms of art. Artisans made a type of cloth with detailed patterns called batik. Musicians played many instruments. Artists created a type of theater that used shadow puppets to tell stories. During the AD 100s, Hindu traders from India reached coastal areas of Southeast Asia. They created a trading network so that goods and ideas could be exchanged among the peoples of Southeast Asia, India, and the Middle East. As different people came into contact, their cultures spread throughout Southeast Asia. Kingdoms and empires. Southeast Asian states in inland areas relied mainly on farming. States along the coast relied more on trade. They became maritime, or seafaring, powers based on shipping. In 938, the people who lived in what is now Vietnam won independence from China. Their new state was called Dai Viet, or Great Viet. It was based on China's government. Confucianism became its official religion. Viet rulers used Chinese court ceremonies. Government officials were selected through Chinese-style civil service examinations. Present-day Cambodia was once the home of the Khmer people. Khmer kings based their rule on Hindu and Buddhist ideas from India. They had architects design Indian-style buildings. The most magnificent of these structures was Angkor Wat. Angkor Wat served as a Hindu and Buddhist temple, a royal tomb, and an observatory for stars and planets. The expense of building Angkor Wat weakened the Khmer Empire. In 1432, the Thai, a neighboring people, captured Angkor. The Khmer Empire faded from history. The first Thai kingdom was called Sukhothai. It became a center of learning and arts. The Thai developed a writing system. Monks from India converted many Thai people to Buddhism. The Thai were also influenced by Hinduism in their political practices, dance, and literature. In 1350, a new Thai kingdom called Ayutthaya was formed. Ayutthaya controlled large areas of Southeast Asia. It was also an important center of Buddhist learning and culture. The people of Ayutthaya traded teak wood and spices with China and other nearby Asian kingdoms. West of the Thai kingdom, the Burmese developed their own civilization. In 849, they set up a capital city called Pagan. It, too, became a center of Buddhist learning. In the late 1200s, Mongol attacks weakened Pagan. Many Burmese people moved south to escape the Mongols. New states grew around seaport cities on the Malay Peninsula and the islands of Indonesia. The people living on Southeast Asian islands were Malays. They were divided into separate communities because of the distance and trade rivalries. In the 700s, a Malay state called Srivijaya developed on the islands of Java and Sumatra. Srivijaya controlled the major trade route. Muslim traders and missionaries brought their religion to Southeast Asia in the 800s. Eventually, Islam began to spread. The port of Malacca became the first major Islamic center in the region. Islam spread from Malacca, on the Malay Peninsula, to the islands of Indonesia. The only island to remain outside of Muslim influence was Bali. It kept its Hindu religion and culture at the time and still does today.